look back in hindsight, everything is 2020. In hindsight, we make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, is so much clearer now.
Hey, welcome to Hindsight, the podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, and today joining me is Faris Aranki, the dynamic founder and CEO of Shiageto Consulting. With over 20 years of experience in steering strategic change across various industries and companies worldwide, Faris brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. But what sets Faris apart is his belief that success isn't just about having a great strategy. It's about effectively engaging with others and breaking down barriers along the way. So get ready to dive into the world of strategic success with Faris Aranki, because at Shiageto Consulting, they believe that with the right support, any team can thrive. Hey, Harris. I said Harris. All those times I said Faris. Hey, Faris, welcome to Hindsight, the podcast. Where are you calling from?
Hey Lee, a pleasure to be with you. I'm calling today from London, UK. Greetings to all my fans. No, that's my ego. Greetings to everyone on the other side of the Atlantic. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate you being on here. Now, we were having a little technical difficulty, so third time's the charm. We're going to make this interview and this podcast episode happen. So before we get started, right? It's not even before we get started. We're going to jump right into it because okay. I want to know right now your formula for success, the Shiageto ethos for success, what you stand on. So talk to me about IQ, EQ, FQ.
Let's do it. Let's jump straight in, Lee. Right. So IQ, EQ, FQ. You gave away the magic equation straight away, and I used to be a math teacher, so I love equations. But hey, let's take it from the top, right? If you want to be successful in life, whatever you want to achieve, right? Let's start out. You've got to have a vision. You've got to have a goal. And you've got to have an objective. Once you have that, 3 components to get you there. One is the IQ, and that is the ideas to get you there. Most people just pick the first idea that pops in their head. No. Right? You need to come up with a range of ideas, pick the best one, stress test it. That's the IQ side of strategy. Okay. And once you've got that on, that's not enough, right? You need to take others on the journey with you. That's where the EQ part comes in, the emotional intelligence, right? Because otherwise it's just a piece of paper. An idea is just a piece of paper. If people don't buy into it, ain't nothing going to happen, right? So EQ, right. And that's about taking others on the journey, getting them on the bus, getting them excited by your idea, right? Really being able to talk to other humans and transfer that knowledge, right? But that's still not enough. This is where the FQ, and that's Focus Quotient. A lot of your listeners wouldn't have heard of Focus Quotient, but if you are not focused enough to work on your strategy and your vision, you are not going to achieve anything. What do I mean by this? Too many of us and these companies and people try and do too many things at the same time. Right? We are not setting ourselves up for success. And also, we're not looking down the line saying what barriers are going to be in our way. Let's remove them before we start this journey. And that's what focus is about. Prioritize, remove barriers, and then you're more likely to be successful. So you need IQ, EQ, and FQ to be that success.
All right. So now we know where we're going. So this is Hindsight, the podcast. So let's bring it back now. Now I want to know a little bit about you. Right?
Okay.
When you came up with maybe you came up with that formula, or maybe your company, however it worked. But tell me a little bit about your experience and how you came to Shiageto.
Yeah, so I came up with that formula, and how did I come to it? Prior to setting up my company 4 years ago, I spent 12 years as a strategy consultant, the kind of McKinsey type person, right? Lots of IQ, lots of coming up with big ideas. And you know what? You get paid millions of dollars to do that. But what I discovered in 12 years of doing that is it's not enough, right? You present a really smart answer to a board at a big company, and what do? They start chipping away at it. They start going, no, we don't like that. We don't like that. That's not us, right? And 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't do anything with your big idea, right? And that just amazed me because often they've paid millions for it, right? And so I started to think, why is this? And it's certainly I could see the lack of the EQ, right? People walking into a room going, I'm smarter than you. Here's what you should do. Human beings hate having ideas thrust upon them. And that's when I realized that actually the best people in the company were those with really good EQ, able to sell the idea, convince the other person it was their idea, right? It was their strategy, not that it belonged to McKinsey, not that it belonged to a super smart person in a room. But that still wasn't enough, because I was like fascinated. Well, okay, you can have companies that buy into the idea, but why are they still not successful? And that's when I stumbled across this missing component, the focus quotient. In fact, I was surprised nobody was talking about focus quotient. So actually I trademarked it. It's that sort of dedication and laser focus, because that for me is a big barometer, a difference between companies that are successful or not. So many companies out there trying to do 100 things simultaneously, and they end up failing, and they go, oh, that wasn't, that was a surprise. But you're like, actually, buddy, there's no surprise when you look at it from hindsight.
Right. I know that's right. So were you this, you said you like math problems and math formulas. Were you this way as a kid? So did you, tell me a little bit about your childhood, and tell me about some influences that maybe got you to this spot that you are today, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as a kid, I grew up in South London, the son of my parents, two immigrants who came to the UK. And so they pushed us hard, me and my brothers and sisters. So actually IQ was expected from us, right? Good grades, working hard. That was kind of the minimum expectation, right? And I know that's the American story, a lot of immigrants and stuff. And do you know what? As someone who was a little bit different, right? Growing up in the 80s, I learned the importance of EQ, right? How do you fit in with a group of people when you look a bit differently, or you have a different culture, or you talk a different language, So I learned how to tell jokes, how to fit in with any group, largely as a defense mechanism. But actually what I was doing was improving my EQ. So if you talk to my friends back then, I was always the guy making stupid jokes, trying to make everyone my friend. And in some ways, they're still doing that today. So without knowing it, I was sort of working my IQ, EQ. And if I'm honest, as a kid, I was the kind of kid who had terrible FQ. I got easily distracted. Like one week I'd want to do this hobby. The next week I'd be like, Dad, can we do this sport? Can we? So actually, I was really bad at that. And actually, that led to the downfall of a lot of things. So yeah, as a kid, I just, flitted here, there and everywhere, worked hard, but no real sort of direction. And, and I'm sure that's a lot of kids out there as well.
Yeah, I know. And I'll tell you what, you said growing up in the 80s. So I did 70s, 80s. How was I? So I was a teenager in the 80s. Anyway, bottom line is, focus nowadays for a child, for an adult, is crazy, because you have access to so much information, so much data, so much, what in whatever package it is, if it's entertainment, if it's knowledge based, whatever it is, right? There's so much access to everything. So I'm curious now, you spoke about focus being the missing ingredient to a lot of this. Can you talk a little bit about how that fits in, and maybe some strategies on focusing in on what it is that you're trying to be successful at?
Yeah, for sure. And it's such a funny thing, because we all can be focused when it's the right thing, right? Right. Yeah. If even though I tell you as a kid I wasn't focused, give me a video game like Mario Kart.
Oh yeah.
I'd play for 8 hours in a row, right? FIFA. Right. So of course I had focus. It just depended on what it was. So number one, tip for anyone who wants to improve their focus is work out what your priorities are. Right. A lot of our lack of focus comes from the fact that we don't have clarity in our life. Like, this is the most important thing, right? These three things, if push came to shove, these are the things I need to achieve, want to achieve, because then it's easier to focus. Because if you don't have that, you'll just do a bit of everything, right? And I mean, in companies, that's where I help companies is be really clear. What do you need to achieve? Launch this product, enter this country. Don't try to do them all at once. Which one is more important, right? Because those, as the senior leaders, if you don't know, then your staff definitely don't know, and they'll start doing their own thing. They'll fill in the gaps. So be really clear on your prioritization, and then number two, know yourself, right? Know yourself. If you know how you get distracted by what, find a way to eliminate that distraction. Now, if it's if it's your mobile phone, right, which we all do, put it in another room, right? Lock it in a box. Give it to somebody else, right? Silly little things that will distract you. And there's a lot of things that people don't think about distractions and focus, like lunchtime, like hunger, right? Where does your mind go when you're hungry, Lee? Right? Don't know about you, but it certainly doesn't It doesn't go on the task I'm meant to be doing, right?
I know it really depends on what I'm doing when I get hungry, right?
Exactly,
Absolutely.
right?
I want to focus on getting something to eat.
You want to focus, yeah, it's the same. When we're cold, we focus on turning the heating up, or man, I'm cold, I got to get a jumper, I got to get a sweater. Or when we're
Right.
angry, we don't focus. So eliminate these simple things, right? Make sure you've
Yeah.
eaten before you do an important task. Make sure you're in a
Hmm.
room that isn't too cold, right? These are the sort of things that you can instantly bring you back your focus and not distract. And that goes, all the way up, right? If you know in an
Right.
office that your copier machine is broken and everyone in the office is going to get up, kick it for 10 minutes, get frustrated, just change the damn copier, right? Because that is a focus
Right.
barrier, right? And there's
Right.
lots of things around the business that people just know, but nobody fixes. And they just
Hmm.
drain your focus. So macro, really prioritize, really give clear signals to your team. Micro,
Hmm.
eliminate these small things that people will stumble over day in, day out.
Wow. Thank you. First of all, those are really good, clear, and actionable items that you can implement right away, like right
Yeah.
now. I know I did 20 something years. I won't say the whole number, but 20 something years in the Army, right? And one of the
Okay.
things that they talk about for leaders is to provide purpose, motivation, and direction. But as a leader, everyone can be a leader, right? So you really want to be able to provide that for yourself if you don't have that additional leader out there. So having that motivation, that purpose, and definitely that direction helps to give you that focus. You can focus in on what it is that you're trying to take care of. I appreciate that. So let's go. How do you stay motivated and resilient in the face of setbacks and failures? So a lot of times it's you know, and that's a simple enough question, right? But you have all the
Yeah.
motivation, you have the purpose, you have the direction, right? But you're running into obstacles. Things aren't going well, right? How do you, from your perspective, stay resilient? Give me some tips on that.
Yeah. Great question, right? And anyone who's started their own business needs a lot of this, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a total roller coaster. Forget Disney, forget Universal. This is the roller coaster, right? You start your own
Yeah,
business, and so
absolutely.
there's the big picture resilience, right? How do you stay strong when things get super tough, right? And
Yeah.
that's about having systems, support structure. It's about I'll happily tell you some of my techniques around failure when things go really badly. I've got
Yeah.
a couple of techniques that I use personally. But let's focus first of all on the micro, right?
Okay.
The little things, the little knocks you get day in, day out that just knock you sort of 5%, 10%, make you a bit more. First of all, be aware of it, right? It goes
Mm,
back to my focus point. Know yourself. Know when you're
right.
not in a good mood. Know when you're think, right? And then have an intervention that is quick and easy. And it could be ring your favorite friend, have a chat with them, drink from your favorite mug, listen to your favorite song, right? Make silly
Mm,
faces in front of the mirrors, whatever that just gets you back to that best version of yourself or a slightly better version of yourself. Because you will thank yourself. Because if you carry that 5% into the next meeting, that meeting will go badly. Then it'll be another 5% you've lost, and then another 5%. So that is
yeah.
my top tip, right? Find your techniques, know yourself to get back up to the best version of yourself for resilience.
Okay. Nice. Nice. You're not going to give me any of your personals? what, what inspired you to pursue a career in strategic consulting?
Hey, that's a great question, right? And I actually started my career, as I kind of alluded to, as a math and economics teacher. Right? I
Yeah.
taught high school math and economics. I loved it. I taught around the world, got to visit some great countries. But then I made a switch and moved into business. And initially, I was just a generalist in business, but I found I loved solving problems and working out
Mm,
why things were happening. And I ended up in the strategy team of a big oil and gas company. And
okay.
that's when I realized this is what I wanted to do. And I actually then got approached to join strategy consulting, where I spent the next 12 years. So it was, looking back, I sort of studied math and economics, so I was always very analytical. But I loved getting to the root of things, but most importantly, helping others get to the root of the things,
Mm,
and that's what led me to strategy.
that emotional. I know. How many countries did you live in?
To date, I have lived in, I think, 6 different countries, Lee.
Did you all? So how many? I like asking this question too. How many languages do you speak, or did you speak?
It depends to what level, but I can hold. I can speak very well in 3 languages and basically in another 3.
Yeah, I tell you what, man. Good. Bravo to you. I am still trying to not even master, just to be able to hold a conversation in Spanish. Right. I did take
Okay.
German. I took German when I was in high school, so that's gone for the most part. I can say the alphabet and I can say the numbers, and I can greet you, but that's about the extent of that. But I really am interested on getting better at learning, or at least learning a language conversationally, right? So just looking at that specific thing,
Yeah.
what would you tell me to do to be better focused so that I can be successful in achieving this goal of having a conversational type understanding of a foreign language?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say muy bien, hablas español.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
See,
yeah,
see, see.
see. Okay. So first of all, let's go back to this is where the equation comes in handy, right?
Right.
Let's say your objective is to learn a language. So then the IQ part is come up with all the ways you could learn a language. And let's just fire off a couple quickly, right? One is, study from a book. 2 is hire a local teacher. 3 is move to the country, right? 4 is use an app, right? Yeah, and I could keep listing, right? This is what IQ is about. Keep coming up with 10 ideas, pick the best one or the one that is best for you. And for you, it might be, look at it, cost versus effort, these sort of things. So let's say you pick from that. Actually, I'm going to find a local tutor. I'm going to find somebody local to me. I can have classes once a week, twice a week, right?
That's
then the EQ part comes in, right? Talk to your friends around you and let them all know this is your plan, so they don't distract you, that they check in on you, that they give you the space once a week, and they don't say, hey, Lee, come to a bar. And you go, no, it's Wednesdays. I'm doing my classes. They go, oh, yeah, okay. That's the EQ part. Take others on the journey. Let them know your plan. Let them get bought in. Let them support you, right? EQ for yourself. Look at why, the FQ part. Look at why you might stop doing this. What might go wrong, Right. And one of the biggest challenges when learning a language, on the FQ side in particular, linked to the EQ, is we all hate failure. We all hate sounding like an idiot when we start learning a language. We hate breaking up somebody else's conversation. We hate getting things wrong. It's okay when you're a kid because people give you the space and time to make those mistakes. But when you're an adult and you can't say a basic phrase, you get embarrassed, right? But that's just a mental block.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. I remember I went to Puerto Rico, and I don't speak Spanish, so there was an instance where it was a group of us. We went to this shopping center, and they have a you got to get a ticket to park in the parking lot. And at some point during the time we were in the mall, I lost the ticket. No one spoke English, and so this one lady, she was like, "Hold on," and I was like, she didn't say "hold on," she just walked away. And I was like, what's happening here, right? So this young gentleman, he comes back. Young guy, he's probably in his early 20s. And he was like, how can I help you? And I was explaining to him. And, some of his English, to your point, some of his English was a little broken because he was studying the language, right? But we could communicate. And he was like, hey, I'm sorry for my English. I was like, why are you apologizing to me? I should be apologizing to you. You're talking to me, and we can, I can understand, and you've helped me solve my problem, right? His whole thing was he was studying because he wanted to join the U.S. Army, right, from Puerto Rico. So that's why he was studying English. And, that resonated with me. When people make fun of individuals who speak multiple languages, right, because the grammar is off or because they say a word wrong, right? Jesus, you don't know how to... So anyway, that bothers me sometimes when people make fun. You need to allow people the space to get better, right?
Exactly.
And to compliment them on those successes. Yeah. I'm off my soapbox.
You're absolutely right. Think how many people who have English as a natural language don't even speak it, properly themselves.
Exactly. And I'm at fault of that sometimes too.
Yeah.
So
me too.
So tell me about Shiageto. Just talk.
Yeah.
What do you do? What is your strategy? What do we
do? So first of all, here you go. Here's the branding. It's on a water bottle, so it must be a real company. Now Shiageto. Shiageto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone, Lee. So if you've ever had a knife go dull, you might have used a Shiageto to sharpen it. Right.
Okay.
So which is a metaphor for what we do for companies. We sharpen their businesses. And we do that in one of two ways. So we help them with IQ, EQ, or FQ. And we do that either by me or one of the team go and work with them and improve those things. We help them, we run workshops for them. We get leaders working better together, teams. We challenge their biases. So we do it by putting ourselves in the middle and facilitating better decision-making, better IQ, better EQ, better FQ, right? Really. Or the other way that we help is we train leaders to do what we do. So they don't need us, right? We run a lot of leadership training for companies to make people better communicators, make better people, better relationship builders, let them to think strategically around their business. What are the FQ barriers? How can they remove them? So those are the two ways that we help. And we've got a beautiful client list that's ever growing. We work with Amazon, we work with Heineken, we work with big global companies, as well as startups and scale-ups and charities to help them with these different problems.
You got to imagine, you see these companies, these businesses, and they're pretty financially successful, right?
Yeah.
What is the biggest aha that they get when they're working with Shiageto? What is the biggest thing? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, right? And I think a big aha for a lot of leaders, even successful leaders, is when they face a time in their career when they can't get through to people for one reason or another.
Wow. Right.
Yeah. And in their head, hey, this all makes sense. Why are you not understanding? Why are you resisting? And often it doesn't happen for super senior leaders that much, but they will face somebody who just goes, nope, I don't believe in your idea. I don't want to follow you. And what they do then is it's a bit like a foreigner going to a foreign country. What do? They just speak slower and they speak louder and think, okay, now the person will get it. What they don't think is, I need to flex. I need to change how I'm communicating or what I'm saying to get this other person on board. And that is the biggest aha moment when I show people, actually, you need to change, not expect the other person in front of you to change. And how powerful that can be at unlocking doors. That's a big aha moment that I see time and time again in companies.
Do you enjoy going out? Do you personally go out to some of these companies, or do you oversee?
Yeah, I still go out.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I still go out. I love it. It's, do you know what? It reminds me of my school teacher days. It reminds me that aha moment is the same as when you got a student, a kid, to understand math for the first time or understand a new concept, and you know things are going to be different for them. It's the same when I get that aha moment in business.
Oh, I love aha moments on anything. You know, fixing a car. It's like I don't. Hell, this podcast right here, right? Sometimes there's little things in computers or whatever, and I know these are simplified things, but it's still the same concept. Where, I just push that button, and it's almost like you just push that button in your mind on how you think and how you react to certain things that push you in a whole different trajectory of success, right? And hopefully, that's what people get out of Shiageto, and naming the names that you've just named. I'm sure that's what they're getting.
You remind me of the story of the first client I ever had at Shiageto, Lee, which was a guy I had trained 12 years before. So for 12 years prior, he came to a one-day training session with me. And 12 years later, he saw I set up a company. And he rang me and he said, for 12 years, I've thought of you because you gave me an aha moment in that training session that changed my career, changed my life, right? You taught me something that I had never seen before. And for 12 years, and now I'm successful, 12 years I've thought of you, and now I want to bring you in. I want to help you out, and I want you to teach my juniors what you taught me 12 years ago. So it's so powerful, those aha moments.
So what about technology? How do you think technology has changed the landscape of strategic planning and decision making? Because for me, it's you can look at it either way. One, it makes you a little lazier, right? It makes you more dependent on the technology. But two, it also gives you the tools to kind of amplify or magnify your processing capabilities. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, right? It allows you the wealth of knowledge that you've never had before, right? You can
Right.
get way more ideas, but it's what you do with it, right? And yeah, there's the
Yeah.
lazy, getting the lazy aspect, but also we often are, we often just slip into our old routines, and we're limited by our own imagination and own biases. So, if I go back to that IQ part, what I do
Hmm.
nowadays with teams, so think of the technology we have today, ChatGPT, generative AI.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm doing strategy with teams, I get somebody on the team to be the chat GPT. I say, for the rest of this meeting, you're going to be the guy on the computer just using chat
Oh, that's
GPT. And
awesome.
we're going to see how it adds, because a lot of them, if I didn't do that, wouldn't use a tool like that because they're old school. They say, oh, well, how can it help us? But by doing that, we suddenly get, 10 times the amount of ideas in the room. Now, I'm not saying we need to pick the one from ChatGPT, but at least have them in the room and then we can pick from
Yeah.
them. And that's where your real skill set comes from. So I'm a big fan, but it's how you use it, a lot of us get scared by technology
Right.
if we're slightly older and it's slightly newer. So
Yeah.
remember, it's a tool, and it should help you rather than dictate to you.
You talked about a lot of positive things, right?
Yeah.
Finding success and all that. But now I want you to kind of shift it a little bit. And can you tell us about a time during your own journey where a major obstacle got in your way, and basically how you overcame that, and
Yeah.
continue to go and be who you are today?
Oh, loads of them, right? I wouldn't be here without the failures as
Most
much as the
people
success.
do.
Oh, yeah. And let's jump back to when I started the company 4 years ago.
Okay.
For those on who are listening to the podcast, we're recording this in early 2024. If you go back 4 years, it was just before COVID. So I set up the business in September 2019, just before COVID. Right. What happened when COVID happened is the business fell away. I had no work
Right.
for over 6 months. Worse than that, I'd quit a high-paid job to do this. So I was like, oh my God, why did I do that? But there was no way back. So it was 6 months of no paycheck. Worse than that, no validation that my idea was good. So no sense of identity and no co-workers to vent with. So so it was a very tough time,
Right.
and how I got through that was a combination of things, right? Lots of resilience, lots of, number one, come up with a process, come up with a daily plan and stick to it. Routine was my friend back then, right? Do stuff, continue to work on the business. Even though I had no customers, no clients, I
Right.
couldn't, it wasn't about sit back and watch Netflix all day. It was still act as though you have clients, right? Get ready for when they are back. So you are lean, mean, ready to go. And the other thing is that sort of, I talked about the techniques that I use when really bad stuff happens to me, which is reframing. I've got this great technique that I call the genie in the bottle, right? If you know the story of Aladdin, Lee,
Right.
you might have heard of you find a genie in a bottle, he gives you 3 wishes. Now, I imagine my genie only has 1 wish, and he
Okay.
or she says to me, you can use me once and only once. So I often say to myself when something bad happens is this so bad that I want to use my genie? And if the answer is no, then I go, well, it can't be that bad, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
pretty
amazing
cool.
how many times that pulls me back and go, actually, worse stuff than this has happened, right? This isn't that bad, right?
Right.
I don't need the genie yet. And to date, I have never had to use the genie just by using that mental technique.
Right. That is pretty. I love it. I love it. I never made it so simple like that, and that's an easy thing. I usually not necessarily obstacles where you need a genie to get you out of it, but sometimes even in situations where there's disagreement, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say, is this worth the relationship, right? Is it worth the win but lose the relationship? In certain things, right? And when you think about it, sometimes the answer is yes, right? Because
Right.
for whatever reason, but a lot of times it's no. In business, it's probably more yes than no, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in just personal relationships, it's probably more no than yes. So
Yeah.
that's my thing. I like the genie, and hopefully 4 or 5 or 12 years from now, I'll reach back and say, you know what, Faris, you brought this genie, and I've been thinking about you for the last 12 years. and using that strategy, right? And I want to bring you back on so we can talk about it again.
I'll be proud.
Cool.
And you know what, Lee? I'm going to give you another. I'm going to give you another one, a freebie, because you're the Hindsight show. The other technique that I learned that I use a lot is called failure anniversaries. Right now, what is a failure anniversary? If something bad happens in your life, a big failure, what I recommend people to do is go to your calendar, put a date with yourself, put a meeting invite with yourself for a year from that date, or 6 months from that date, to celebrate that failure. Right? Why do you do this? Right?
Wow.
If you have these come up, right, when something bad has happened to you, look in your calendar for an upcoming failure anniversary and go, look, I've got an anniversary coming up from something that happened last year. Oh, and do you know, a year ago, I thought that was the end of the world, but oh my God, I don't even think about that anymore. Right? So just seeing that, you go, do you know what? Actually, it wasn't as bad as the moment. So put those dates and they just give you that mental checklist of, hey, amazing. It's a year since that terrible thing. It's 2 years since that terrible thing that I thought was the end of the world. It isn't. It isn't.
What are they called again?
Failure anniversaries.
Failure anniversaries. I'm writing it down, so if you're wondering what I'm doing. I like stuff like this because it keeps you grounded. It keeps you going forward too. You feel me? So I absolutely love strategies like that. Okay, I've asked a few questions. And I don't know if I touched on everything that you want to talk on. So this is your opportunity. What are some things that we missed or some things that we didn't discuss that you like to enlighten me or enlighten the listeners on?
Lee, I get the sense that you and I could talk for like 6 hours and we still wouldn't touch anything. And as my daddy always taught me, was always leave the guests wanting something more, right? Always leave them coming back. So, you know, we've got more than enough reasons to have a second episode of this podcast, Lee. There's loads of great stuff. I can share lots of stories, examples, techniques, around each of those domains. But I think we've covered a good amount and we've left your listeners wanting more. So I hope they reach out and we carry on the conversation. I hope you and I speak again. I think we've covered some good stuff.
So where can the listeners find out more information about you or Shiageto Consulting? Yeah. And how can they reach out? All those different things.
I think the two best places are, number one, come and check out Shiageto's website. So it's shiageto.com. And Lee, I'm sure you'll put in the spelling of that so your listeners can find it. And number two, come and find me personally on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of my life there. I share my daily life on LinkedIn. I write a weekly blog there. So I think there's only one Faris Aranki on LinkedIn. So I should be easy to find. And connect with me, send me some questions, and we will definitely have more, carry on the conversation.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. I'll link up with you on LinkedIn right after this. So it'll be before the show gets started, obviously, because it takes, but anyway, I'll reach out to you. So look forward to that. And I'll look forward to your daily or your weekly posts and things like that. And hopefully I'll learn something. And also, I'm going to ask you right now, I know you said we could talk later on, but do you commit to coming back on Hindsight, the podcast?
I do, Lee. I do. You hit it here, the exclusive. I commit.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on, Faris, and talking about IQ, EQ, FQ, right? So hopefully, and I'll put that in the show notes too with a brief explanation of that. That FQ is a thing. Like, you really need to focus in on those things that are the priority to you, right, in order to be successful. That is, I have all kinds, matter of fact, I was just having a conversation, honestly, this morning about just having so many different ideas and moving in so many different directions and lacking the focus on the priority, whatever the main priority is of those list of things. So talking to you just further strengthens, I guess, that conversation on me personally needing to add that FQ into my equation so that hopefully it can, make for a more successful venture. I want to write a book, so I gotta put that in. I gotta put that in, right? I gotta find what's the best ways to write a book. So I learned all these things. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you sharing your story. Next time we're going to really get into your childhood just a little bit, though, because I'm gonna focus a little bit on hindsight, and we'll tune it into a more of a theme, I guess. Okay. We'll come up with something. We'll talk.
Don't worry. I know we will.
All right, Faris. Thank you so much for coming on Hindsight, the podcast.
Thank you very much, Lee.